Joining me now is Randy Rand of the band Autograph, and their new song, Souls on Fire, is out there now. Welcome to the show, Randy. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me today.
Thank you very much, Christian.
Now, I would say that for most people, when they think of when most people think of Autograph, they immediately think of the song Turn Up the Radio. Now, obviously, the band is much more than one song. You know, any band is more than one song. But do you think of it as a blessing that you had a song like that was so successful, considering how many bands never even get that one, monster hit?
It was more than a blessing. It's like still in the top 100 of all time anthems. So that's more than a blessing, brother.
Not a week goes by that I don't hear it on Sirius XM, by the way. It's
me either, dude. Me either. And I love it.
Yeah, please play it more often. Yeah. You often hear this sort of thing about, this song that sometimes will become a band's breakthrough hit or their signature song. And is it true that you and the rest of the guys in the band didn't love that song and weren't 100% sold on putting it on the album? And
no.
And that it was one of the last things recorded for Sign In, Please.
Well, what it was is we needed two more songs because we only gave them 20. So they said, okay, we still need two more.
Yeah.
And Turn Up the Radio came from a jam. Me and the drummer were playing Feels Like the First Time. That dun, dun, feels like the first.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So that's where that started from. And then Steve Lynch came up with the lick, and Steve Plunkett came up with the lyrics, and keyboard. Isham came up with the keyboards. And honestly, the music was done in 45 minutes, and we loved it. RCA hated it, so we had to talk him into it.
Oh, so that's the other way around. Yeah, I mean, but there's the thing you do hear sometimes about so many, hit songs. It's like, yeah, that one we did in 45 minutes. And then, other bands will have, songs that they labor on for months that, the band likes and is maybe a little bit of a cult favorite, but, it's always like the single that never quite broke through, So it's great. I mean, look, there's a reason why we still hear it on the radio. One, you're literally telling us to turn up the radio, but
yeah,
because it's still a great song. There's a lot of, old time looking back in the day stuff I want to do, but I do want to talk about right now. You have this great new song called Souls on Fire. I want to talk about making the song and then what you're doing with the proceeds from it. But let's talk about the song itself first, where it came about.
Well, it came about because our new guitarist, Jimmy Bell, he can't stop sending us stuff. So he sent us this all his riffs and all this stuff because that's what he does so well. Such a great little guitar player. And Simon came up with Souls on Fire, and we thought, wow, that's really cool. And then we just kind of started building from there. So it started off with Jimmy, then went to Simon, and went to me and Mark after that. And it just worked, man. It just worked.
Yeah, no, it's great. And, it's obviously the band, back in the 80s and onward had a bit of had some degree of a heavy sound, but this is a very modern heavy sound, that I'd like to say that's kind of like a classic sound, I mean, like when you hear a song like that, or you hear like not the first Quiet Riot record, but the Mental Health, when you hear stuff like that, you're like, oh, that's great. It feels a little bit of that moment, but this is great too. And I love the fact, and you're talking a little bit about the different composition of the band. I'm reading about Jimmy Bell. So I guess in addition to having been part of House of Lords, he was Joan Jett's guitarist in the movie Light of Day, which I know that's more like for show business, but then it's like, oh, I've seen that guy. So how did, he's only been in the band for a little while, right? For about a year or so. So how did you end up working with him?
Well, believe it or not, we were friends with him, and Steve Lynch, our old guitar player, they were really good friends. And so it's weird when Steve Lynch wanted to leave, and we said, okay, we got to find a guitar player. Honestly, the first guitar player came to mind was Jimmy, just because he's such a great guy and such a great player. And so I gave him a call and said, what do you think? And he said, I'm in. And so it was that easy. Really
and you were talking about what he brings to the band, which is what he's always sending you stuff. So is it like, does he have a home studio, or is it more he just like uses his iPhone and is like, hey, listen to what I was working on?
Yeah, iPhone, direct to iPhone. Welcome to the new age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. It's almost like, we're talking to each other on laptops right now. That could be our home studio if it needs to be. For me, it is, but I mean, it's just interviews and stuff. But you know, I mean, I've seen plenty of bands, you know, just like, oh yeah, I'm working on this right now, and it's on the laptop. So it's pretty impressive, and I guess it saves on the old big expenditure of studio time, you know.
But our drummer Mark Whelan, he's an engineer and he has a studio, and it's
Even better.
yeah, and it's all Pro Tools, all on a console. You know, it's not a console anymore; it's just right there in front of him.
Yeah.
And we did Get Off Your Ass on that, and we did Souls on Fire on that, and it sounds good, man.
Yeah. And Up Your Ass was that was the album from 3 years ago, right? From 2017.
Exactly.
Yeah. And was and the band, we're sort of going a little bit backwards, but the band got back together within the last decade. Was that the first new album? I should have done my homework better, but I almost said it was the first new album. Then I'm like, what if I'm wrong? I don't want to embarrass myself.
It was what we were doing. We were doing like a song here, a song there, a song here. You know, like most people are doing. And we just finally combined them together and made a little album out of it.
Right. Well, you know, we're obviously in this weird time right now. If it was up to you and the world was, well, I was going to say the world was normal, but has the world ever really been normal? But if it was for what passed for normal a year ago, would you guys be planning on an album and maybe a tour to follow? Like what was the plan before, before life happened, as they say?
Well, we had a whole tour booked and that went away. And I think we had maybe 6 or 7 shows the rest of the year. And, you know, we're always working on something. It's just, especially when you got new blood in and you want to do that. It's just, I just can't wait for it to be back to normal if it ever is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. It's, you know, I've talked to a lot of musicians about some of the different ways that people are performing, you know, in theaters at like, you know, percent, like a 33% capacity or whatever the rules are in the individual states. Sometimes outside, you know, you got drive-ins, you got all these things. And the majority of them seem to feel like, okay, I mean, I get that, but let's give it a few more months and see, you know, how close we can get to getting on an actual stage instead of like, let's meet out in a field, you know, and not like Woodstock, you know, like out in a field with 200 people spread out like they were 20,000, you know.
We just played live in Colorado this Saturday.
You did?
Yeah.
How was that? What size venue was that?
1,000 people, but they let 700 in, and they separated the tables 6 feet apart, and
sure,
no one's really doing it. But anyway, it was really a blast to play live again with, you know, the amps behind you and, you know, people clapping and stuff. It was great.
And that was in Colorado. So look, that's interesting. I mean, that seems, you know, it seems like that's the way that bands are playing live. And, you know, I mean, I work for a comedian. I work with comedians, and you know, it's the same thing with doing stand-up. Some states are like, sure, yeah, we're doing shows. Come on over here and there. So, I guess it's difficult to map out a tour. But you're the first musician I've talked to in these last few months. It's like, oh yeah, I just did a gig. But I'm going to assume that was the first thing that came along in all these months, right?
First one after what was it, February 8th or 10th, the Monsters of Rock cruise. That was the last time we played.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, that's you know, I was talking to just recently, I talked to the comedian Don Jameson from that metal show, and he was on that cruise. And I was saying to him, like, oh, it must be a bummer that you haven't been to a show in a while. He's like, well, you know, the last thing I went to was a Monsters of Rock cruise. So I guess when you go there, you see like, you know, 100 of your favorite bands, you know, so it's like, if you're going to go out when it's a big event for that. So I wanted to backtrack to Souls on Fire for a second, because I wanted to talk about this idea that the proceeds are going to benefit Trinity Health of New England. I wanted to talk about that and why that specific charity or that specific organization.
Jimmy Bell's fiance is a nurse there, and also one of the leaders of that whole Trinity. And we found out how hard she worked all the time doing this whole time, and how much time she had to put in. And, you know, she's in a mess 7 days a week and helping people. So we figured, man, let's just see if we can help them. Let's just see if we can give them a little bit of the money of this. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, and that's great. It's obviously if people, there's a few ways to find the song, but you can go to autographband.com. That's sort of like the one-stop shop for everything, and they can find it there. So you're talking about how you had a tour planned. So is the idea to do some more songs during this downtime, and then hopefully that ends up being the next actual album, or it's just Do you even need to do a record anymore? You know, it's like, oh, we got a song now. We'll have a song in a couple months and maybe a few
You
more
just
songs.
combine all at
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, there's probably got like 6 other songs we're right now working on. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so you mentioned that you have drummer Mark Weiland now, and the vocalist guitarist Simon Daniels. So talk about this permutation of the band. We've got Jimmy as well, who we talked about,
Mhm.
and actually, the fact that you played live with them must have felt great.
Yeah.
Had you, and you'd all played together at the Monsters of Rock cruise, so it must have felt good. Did you get much time to rehearse?
No,
Or yeah.
none. We just rehearsed at home with videos of ourselves playing live for years.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting because it's not like you could be like, oh well, let's all Zoom together and rehearse. There's like always such a delay. It's like you can't really do that, so
First time we did Souls on Fire was Saturday that we'd never rehearsed except in sound check. It was a little painful, but I mean we got through it. It was
So, and maybe it's not announced yet or anything, but obviously you're open to performing, and I'm sure people really, I've said to so many people that like first concert for everyone, whenever it is, it doesn't even have to be your absolute favorite band. You're gonna feel like it was, So it's like. I'm sure that you said it was 700 people. So
yeah,
that had to be a lot of fun for everybody there, and for you guys.
Everyone
too.
had a great time. I got feedback on Facebook. It's like, thank you so much for coming. It was like so fun to hear that, the amplifiers and the speakers in my face, and I can't hear when I woke up in the morning. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing we all miss,
That's right.
is waking up the next one. Huh?
What?
I want to backtrack all the way back to you guys all put the band together originally in Pasadena, and I wanted to get your reaction to a comment I read. And you read a lot of things on the internet, so I always hope that anything that I ask you is true, and if it isn't, just be like, yeah, that's made up. But before you were an Autograph, you were in a band called Wolfgang, and Kevin DeBro, who people know from Quiet Riot, he said that that band Wolfgang was not only better than Quiet Riot, but you would get a better response than Van Halen. Now, and who obviously famously, made a name for themselves playing these like backyard parties in Pasadena. So is that true that that band was bigger, at least in Pasadena, than even Van Halen?
Well, in the whole Hollywood scene, yeah, it was.
Wow.
That was me and Steve Plunkett before Autograph.
Right.
And
okay, so that was the both of you in that same band that went on.
Both of us. And I can give you a little quick history.
Sure.
Kevin DeBro is a great friend of mine. Frankie Benelli, always a great friend of mine. Of course, David Lee Roth and those guys. That's why we did the Van Halen tour. They knew us and they loved their music. And it's like kind of a big family thing. I was doing Lita Ford's second album in New York. And I got a call from Plunkett going, would you like to go on tour with Van Halen? And I went, yeah. And so
I guess that'll be all right. Sure.
Yeah, right. Got my buds. That'll be a blast. They were just breaking through like crazy. I guess that's like 83. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the 1984 album. And I didn't even know three of the guys in the band. I just knew Plunkett. And we had 3 rehearsals, got in a Winnebago, and drove all the way to Hollywood, Florida. And our very first gig was in front of 14,000 people.
Wow. So, and that was the first gig as a band, was opening for Van Halen.
We didn't play anywhere else except for rehearsals. That was the very first gig.
Wow. I mean, you want to talk about, just jumping into the deep end is, I guess there's sort of an obvious question, which is, how do you entertain people who are there to see Eddie Van Halen and obviously David Lee Roth, the whole band, but they're there for Eddie and they're there for Dave. And then anybody who comes out beforehand, especially at that time, being a brand new band, did you guys feel confident about the music you were bringing to the audience? Or were you like, oh man, we were scared shitless?
I had moments. Well, sure. Most of the shows that we did, we got really good. I mean, people did really well. I was shocked at how well they accepted us. But in Nashville, we didn't get through 3 songs because we got hit by so much crap from the audience, like bumpers and cans and we said, okay, we're done. we get the message. But that was the only gig. I think it was like 60 gigs.
Yeah, I was reading that as an unsigned band, you toured with them for a while, and I mean, what better way to showcase a band than going on before Van Halen? And I guess it makes sense that if again, if the internet's to be believed, that you opened for them at the Garden in New York, and that's obviously where all the record industry types, the weasels, if you want to be a little bit disparaging but still somewhat nice, they probably descended on that show, and they were all there. But it makes perfect sense that you play New York, and that's when all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, sign on the dotted line. So from putting the band together to driving to Hollywood, Florida, how much time was that
Before Madison Square Garden and getting signed by RCA?
Yeah.
It's probably like 4 months, 5 months.
Right. So 4 months from putting the band together, going to Florida, so yeah. And then how long is it before the first record comes out then? So
it took a good 6 months.
Sure.
Because we had to write a lot of stuff, and they were patient with us, and we were waiting for a producer, and it took a while, and it was okay. And when we got in there, we were at the record plant. I mean, they gave us a lot of money. They gave us a 3-record deal, $3 million deal. That's why we said, we'll sign with you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's, and of course now it's a lot different, for new bands, for any band, but nobody's getting a 3-record deal or $3 million. So yeah, to think back on that must be great, but obviously you get that sort of opportunity. And before talking about some of the music itself, I know that some of the other tours that you guys did, you also toured with Dio and Aerosmith and Motley Crue. Now, was this Aerosmith like done with Mirrors Aerosmith, or was it permanent? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking like, oh, if it was Permanent Vacation Aerosmith, then you're like, oh, we're opening for, double platinum selling Aerosmith, not the, hey, are these guys clean yet? We don't really know,
Hey, they used to sneak into our dressing room and try to grab our booze, and we were told not to let them.
Yeah, which, by the way, I love Aerosmith. I do like that record, Done with Mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
It's it just wasn't quite the moment for them to come back. So I mean, you're obviously opening for Van Halen when you're a brand new band is one thing, but then getting that kind of exposure, I'm sure that that helps. I mean, at least you hope the Motley Crue fans maybe pre-gamed a little bit more in the parking lot, so their aim isn't as good as the Van Halen fans who were throwing stuff at you.
Actually, the Theater of Pain tour, well, I've known Nicky ever since he was Frankie, so that's how long.
Yeah.
So that was really just a fun. What I can remember of it was really, really fun, and the audience was great. You could turn up the radio, just hit the top 40, and their album just turned platinum. It was like such a great combination of like all the kids are hitting hits all over the place. So it was it worked out real well.
Yeah, no, I mean that's I'm 44 now, so I missed out on Motley Crue the first time around. I saw them on their farewell tour, which is we now know was like a farewell for 5 years. But I can only imagine like when you in those days you get a ticket and you get like 2 great bands that have all these songs that you love, and I mean look, you certainly can get that now, but it's usually at the cost of like, well, 2 super big headline bands, and $300 later there's your ticket.
Right.
So,
right.
But one of the things I was reading about, turn up the radio sort of at the point where the song was building, it was used on an episode of Miami Vice, and for younger people in the audience, that doesn't necessarily mean as much, but 1, that was such a big show, and 2, that's at the point where still most of the country only had like 3 or 4 channels. So if you were on a big show on a network, like that had to be huge. So talk about the impact of having your first album, a song from it, in a show that's sort of this iconic show at the time.
Well, it was cool because it was called The Little Prince, which is still in the top 10 of all of those. So that those still play, we still get paid. So I kind of like that too.
Oh yeah, I bet you're a big Don Johnson fan all these years later.
I don't care who he is. I like him.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Which is good because what I remember from that time period, a lot of times they would have like sound-alike bands record like knockoff versions of songs. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you got a real song in there is you still get those nice envelopes once in a while, which is great. So talk about obviously the importance in that time of recording and filming videos. I mean, there's obviously that turn up the radio video you still see. For me, the Send Her to Me video is sort of, to me, that's like the sweet spot for what music videos were. It's like kind of silly, sort of funny. The band's rocking out in like an airplane hangar or a warehouse. And then of course there's no shortage of pretty girls just popping out of the box. So talk about how important that was though at that time, because it's like, I don't know, to me, that seems like it's at least as important, if not more important than getting on the radio, turn up the radio, but also turn up MTV.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like MTV was only like 2 years old with music when it came on. So we were like a new band. Yay. Yeah. I like that video too, you just said, but I like blondes, blondes in black cars too. And
that's good too. Yeah.
Also like Dance All Night with all the girls coming up on stage.
Just to interrupt for a second, what I love about the Loud and Clear video is this idea that the security guard sees Ozzy and Vince Neil is like, no, you guys can't come in, and they're like, well, we're Ozzy and Vince, we're going to come in anyway. But just the idea that somebody would say, no, Ozzy, you're not welcome. It just, it just makes me laugh to think back on that. Sorry. I love
it too. I didn't even know what was going on. I mean, I was on stage. I didn't know they were doing that in the back. So when I saw the video myself, I went, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. When we were playing, Ozzy and Vince and the 3 or 4 girls who also were in Dance All Night were sitting out in front of us. I'm going, what the hell? I didn't know these guys were coming by today. That's awesome. We've known those guys forever too.
But to me, that's kind of funny because I would have just guessed that, them sitting there was like a cutaway. They filmed it over like a minute.
What cutaway? They were actually there.
That's really impressive because you feel like it'd be like, all right, Ozzy, sit down, look this way, look that. All right, Mr. Osborne, you're wrapped. Go ahead. But
that's pretty much Sharon who did that to him.
I think she still does.
I think she does.
Yeah. But so talk about sort of the actual, we're sort of referencing some of these iconic things from these videos and how important they were, obviously to you, the band, but also the record company probably, we're talking about some of the money they're throwing around. They must have been like, well, we need a good video,
It was a lot. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars because it was movie producers. No one really knew what they were doing yet because it was so new.
Yeah.
I mean, I think our first one was I can't remember who the guy was now, but he did movies and he still does movies, but he was an actual movie director that got paid like a movie director. And it took 3 days and we had a huge set and I'm like going, oh, really? This is going to happen all the time? What do you mean I have to get up at 6 in the morning, be there at 7, and I'm until 2 in the morning? What?
Yeah, it's interesting because especially, there was a certain point where on MTV they started putting the directors' names on the videos. Mm-hmm. And then you started to realize it kind of coincided with the point that some of these, like a perfect example is the director Spike Jonze, who, he did the movie Her and a bunch of other movies. But, he started out, he did that sort of iconic Weezer video where they're inside an episode of Happy Days, which is still kind of a cool little trick that they did.
It is cool. It is cool.
Yeah. And so it seems like a great way for young filmmakers to have made a name for themselves because it's like, here's a few $100,000, which is more than you need for a video, but it's like, great, I can make a little mini movie. And I think that's why, the videos of that era, they are fun. They tell stories. You could make a video now for, a fraction of that. But at that time, you actually needed to have money or MTV wouldn't want to play your video.
Oh, no, it was, I think our first one was 200,000. Second one was 120,000. I mean, all of them were over $100,000.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Which is great because just to think about that, in terms of, mid 80s dollars, that's quite a bit of promotional materials, but it works because the album sells, the song gets out there, and you're able to go out and tour in support of all of it. I know that you guys did some songs for a few movies, 2 of them that I have in my notes. This movie Fright Night that I love, this sort of cult movie, and the other one Youngblood. Now, somebody who just likes music, never really been in the business, does that usually happen where it's like, oh, we have an extra song, they want one for a movie, or is it like we need a song that kind of has a feel like this? Can you give us something?
Nope, it was RCA, and they said give us songs, and because we have movies. And so we'd write a few songs and then maybe one of them would get in the movie.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I know that the band actually showed up in a movie. This Like Father Like Son, which had Dudley Moore and Kirk Cameron. Which the interesting thing about that is like around this. Are you still there, Randy? Oh, I just lost your camera for a second.
Okay.
Are you still
Yeah,
there?
no,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay.
My phone. Whoops,
No,
sorry.
it's fine. Like Father, Like Son had Dudley Moore and Kirk Cameron. It's this weird thing where, at the same time, there was another movie where father and son switched places. This movie, Vice Versa, with Fred
Mm-hmm.
Savage and Judge Reinhold.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just such a weird thing that, they come out at the same time. Still happens all the time, that like you feel like the same movie. But the point in bringing up the first one is you guys are actually in the movie.
Yeah.
And what was it like was it like just slower than a music video shoot and just, things crawling along because it's a movie, or was it did it feel kind of the same for you guys?
What it was, we actually played live, and
Oh, okay.
they used the live soundtrack, and they had about at Santa Monica, not Santa Monica Civic. Anyway, a big area.
Sure.
Kirk Cameron and Dudley Moore there also in the audience. There's probably about 1,200 people in the audience, so they could pan back, so it looked like a huge audience.
Sure.
It felt like a great little thing. So we played like 4 times and we were done.
Well, the impressive thing is that they use the real audio, because,
Mm-hmm.
you feel like obviously when, a band records a video, they don't use the real audio, and a band in a movie, it's like, great. Well, obviously the record company wants us to use the track the way it sounds on the album. So,
But they said it sounded just as good to them. So
that's great.
That surprised us too.
So you guys do those first few records, and by the late 80s, the band breaks up. And the thing that I was reading was during the time that the band was on an extended hiatus, you got into leather making. Now, was that something that you did beforehand, or was it something you just were like, that sounds like fun? I'm fascinated because it's like, rock band, let's just make some leather. How did that exactly happen from point A to point B?
Well, what it was, we kind of like, well, it wasn't hiatus, we were done. So,
Yeah.
But I had a friend called Drew who made all of our guitar straps and our belts and all that stuff. And I said, Drew, I don't know what the hell to do. I've never really had a job or anything before. He said, well, let me show you how to do leather. So he went and showed me how to do leather, and I learned how to do belts and all that stuff. And then our friendship kind of went away. And then I went to Melrose and sold Indian jewelry, which just worked with my hands. And then after that, I met another guy, a business partner. We started making high-end dog collars. So we did that for like 15 years. And then I got sick of it. And then I met Lynch again. I said, let's go play.
I was going to say, you got sick of it and we're like, I got to get back in the band. So yeah, so you guys did actually get back together, you and Steve Lynch. This was, I guess, just for the NAMM show in 2011. Was it just like, we'll just do this for fun? Or did you think, so that wasn't even like, we are going to be the band again, right? It was just more like, let's just have fun, right?
We were just bored with what we were doing. And you said, because we had, our first gig was supposed to be the cruise, the Monsters of Rock cruise.
Oh, sure.
So we said, let's get that together and let's do that. And then we got together some rehearsals. I did Kenny Richards, our old drummer, but he couldn't do it. He just physically couldn't do it. So that's why we brought someone else on board. And then all of a sudden, Sullivan, our booking agent, booked a couple of the gigs before that. And we went, oh, okay. Like Pins Peak with Kicks. And that was like our first gig. And we went, this is fun. And then we went and did the cruise. And we thought we were just going to do the cruise and maybe a couple other shows and be done. Then all of a sudden we had like 40 shows. And we went, oh, okay. We're getting paid well.
I guess
I can do this.
Yeah, I guess I have to put the leather making kit back in storage,
Which is fine with me. Every time I smell leather now, I want to puke.
That's funny. So and then so that it's interesting because there are those bands that they'll do kind of like a Monsters of Rock cruise and maybe a couple shows here or there, but they don't really do much beyond that because you can do all right when you do that. But so that's great that the band's able to be out there. And I was going to say you'll be able to get back on the road eventually, but you already did a show last week. So yeah. And
we got some shows coming up too, and they haven't been canceled yet. So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think it depends on the geography of where these places are. There's probably like the states where you're like, that one could happen. And, I live in Southern California. I can't imagine. Yeah. yeah, I won't see you at the Whiskey or the Troubadour anytime soon. You know, maybe 2021. You know,
Maybe
but
2021.
yeah, but I have a friend who lives in Nashville, and she did go to a show recently. So you know, it just depends on how they do it.
And I'm in Georgia. This place has been open for a long time now, for months.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
got,
So which
they have live shows here now. So
yeah.
look, I'm from Southern California. I lived there for 40 some odd years. I lived in Venice and Marina Del Rey. So I just moved to Georgia like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. You know how it is. Yeah, I haven't. I'm literally at about the 6 month point of not being able to get my hair cut, which is great when I talk to musicians. But at some point, you know, it's going to be 100 degrees outside, and I'm like, all right, enough is enough. I got to go out there. Well, to find out where all these upcoming dates are, and obviously to find out more about the song "Souls on Fire," autographband.com. That again, that's the one-stop shopping. And Randy, I really enjoyed chatting with you. It was great to hear all these stories, and it's just a lot of fun to know that the band is still out there when states will let you perform, you know, but still out there, still making great music. I really like the song too. If I didn't say that in the beginning, I think the new song's great. So I hope that what you guys are working on means that we'll get a little bit more. And
you will. No doubt about it. You will.
And one day you'll be able to play in California again. Just not right now.
No, just not today.
Not today.
Not today.
Well, Randy Rand, thanks again. Autographband.com. Like I said, I really appreciated it. That is all the time we have now. If you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, I'm at ChristianDMZ. You can follow at Bladtcast, Twitter, Instagram, BLADTCAST.com. That is all the time we have, but I will see you next time on the Bladtcast.